So we can just do it that way. And I think that would be fun. So Kahoot.
James doesn't have a cell phone?
James doesn't have a cell phone?
He does. Okay. I didn't know what the new was.
Or you can just use your laptop, because I feel like you can just like pull up another tab and do it that way too. They're talking about the song. All right. So someone's suggesting a song from Ms. Williams to sing tomorrow morning.
No, that's what? Wait, let me click on it. What is this? Oh, never gonna give you. Okay, I can do that.
Yes. All right, she's going to be practicing. All right, so we are going to get started today, and I am going to work with our breathing, and I need to present. I feel like I'm getting a little bit better with the presentation. April Fools. Oh, wow. Yes, it is April Fools. So for those of you that just joined us, it wasn't on earlier, me and Ms. Williams want to let you guys know that we are actually twins. My name is Ms. Williams. And
hi, Bryce. James is funny.
He's like, I knew it.
Fraternal.
April Fools. Oh, Benson is in the house.
Benson.
Hey, Benson. All right, so let me pull up what we're doing. I can't believe it's April 1st. Never did I imagine we would be here. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
Never, ever. Never, ever. I don't know. What about you, Ms. Williams?
True. We didn't breathe.
We did not breathe. What am I doing? Thank you. Oh, my God. See, I'm so glad you're here because, you know. All right. Are we ready, folks? We're going to do a minute of deep breathing, okay? And I am trusting that you guys are breathing along with me. Why does this keep doing that? Okay. So we are just going to do 1 minute of taking deep breaths in, breathing in all the good stuff, and exhaling all the tension. So in, out. Breathe in all the positive things. Exhale all the negative. You might want to close your eyes to help you visualize all the good stuff. In. Breathe in. And out. Last one. All right. Hopefully we're all centered.
Thank you. I look forward to that.
I know. And I always just feel so light afterwards.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. Yes. All right. So, what do you guys know about the impeachment process? Question mark. Let's put some questions, some answers, some responses in the chat box. Oh, let me pull up so I can be able to see with you guys. I always feel so out of the loop when I can't see chat box.
James' hand is up.
Okay, James has his hand up.
So impeachment and conviction are two different things. But in both cases, different parts of Congress will act as like the judges and jury, basically. So you're going to have hearings about the alleged crime that the president had committed.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually in the House, you would need I think it's either a majority or 2/3 to say like, yeah, we think he did this. Let's try to convict him. And you're impeached at that point, but that doesn't really mean anything. There's not any consequences yet. If 2/3 of the Senate agrees to convict you, then, well, you're technically not out yet because they got to hold a separate vote, but it's basically over at that point.
Good. And let's read. Thank you, James. Michelle said, oh, shoot, I'm late. Yes, Michelle, you missed all the singing. No, we just started. So you got my snacks. Oh, Lord. Here they go again. Yeah, so it takes forever because it has to go through a lot before the president is removed. And there's so many different caveats to it. You can, like, for instance, with President Trump, who was recently impeached, it could have not even gone to trial because it could have been a motion to dismiss it could have happened. And then that would have dismissed the whole entire thing. They could have not decided on the terms of the impeachment trial, and then that would have stalled the impeachment process. There could have been just like a vote to say, yes, he did wrong, but no, we're not going to remove him from office. So a lot of people was confused with this latest impeachment because they were all like, oh, snaps, he got impeached by the House of Representatives. And then they were confused when the trial started in the Senate because they didn't realize that impeachment does not equal removal from office. And so they make it an arduous process because they want to make sure that if you're removing somebody, like, it's for a really good reason. But also, I think the process is a bit flawed too because a lot of people tend to vote along party lines, which can create a lot of issues. Why would you let a convicted dude remain in power? That's a good question. Maybe the crime is not as big. It's not a big a deal. And so they might say, finish out your term, but you can't be up for re-election. So it just depends on
practice.
Hands, please.
Who's that? Yeah, someone's trying to.
In practice, it doesn't really work like that because you need 2/3 of the Senate to agree to convict you. And sentencing is another vote, but you just need a simple majority for that. So if you had 2/3 of senators agree to convict already, they're gonna agree on like you're kicked out and you can't run for anything else.
Not necessarily though, because even though, and we'll talk a little bit more about that too, right? Because even though people might vote to impeach, they might not want to disrupt the running of the country by removing a sitting president. So they might say, finish out the term, but you're not up for re-election. I mean, the reality is most of the different things regarding the impeachment has not even been put to the test because there's only been so few presidents to be impeached. Donald Trump made history for recently being impeached. And today we're going to talk about the first president to be impeached, which I think that was you yesterday, James, that talked a little bit. Yep. I think that was you, James, that talked a little bit about Johnson yesterday. That brought up he was the first one to be impeached, right? Was that you, James? Rose said, "Oh yeah, I feel you on that one." Well, there's some things that people say it needs to be updated, like the Electoral College. Yeah. So yesterday, we talked a little bit about Stanton. Edwin Stanton was sorry, the Secretary of War for Lincoln. And Stanton was a really kind of controversial figure. If you liked him, you liked him. And if you didn't like him, You didn't like him. And I told you guys yesterday that Lincoln and Stanton kind of bumped heads a lot in the beginning, and then Lincoln decided that he would be the perfect person for his Secretary of War position because he was the straight shooter. He didn't mince his words. He didn't try to say things in a way that would soften the blow or make people like him. He just, how he felt was how he felt, and he basically said what he said, in the words of Sister Nene Leakes. So anyway, so him and Lincoln developed a really, really, really close bond. And when Lincoln was killed, Stanton actually was really instrumental in keeping the country together and not having it devolve into a lot of craziness. So obviously him and Johnson are going to go back and forth about Reconstruction because Johnson was not a proponent of Reconstruction. He didn't really believe that Blacks should have full rights within society. So when Congress dismissed for the summer until December, he actually went to work trying as quickly as possible to bring the Southern states back into the Union. And some of the things that Johnson promised them was, or suggested to them was like, hey, you guys are still in control. If you control your governments, you're still in control, and you can put limitations on whatever it is that our Congress is trying to push through. So Johnson also believed in the right to own people, and he and his wife did own, did have enslaved peoples that they owned. But he manumitted, that's the word I was looking for. He manumitted them very early on before the war. It's only, we put it up here. So he didn't want so many limitations put on Southern states. Returning to the Union. So really, he kind of wanted business as usual. But the thing that made Johnson a good candidate for Lincoln in terms of his vice presidential choice was the fact that he was the only senator to remain loyal to the Union. And this made Lincoln feel like, okay, this would be a good choice for me because maybe I can get the votes of the Democrats who never left the Union for re-election. And now also remember that this is when Lincoln versus McClellan happened. And as you guys remember, General McClellan was a really well-respected general. He did a lot of good for the Union during the Civil War, but him and Lincoln kept clashing. Him and Stanton also clashed behind the scenes, and Lincoln dismissed McClellan, and McClellan was basically like, okay, you want to dismiss me? That's fine. I'm going to now run against you. And so Lincoln chose Johnson because it helped him get the votes that he needed. And he ended up winning the popular vote and the electoral votes. So he was able to remain president. So Johnson did help. Oh, sorry, I missed what manumitted means. Oh, okay. Thank you, Ms. Williams. All right, so this kind of sets up the stage between Stanton and Johnson, who were both not fond of each other even when Lincoln was alive. And when Lincoln passed away, it just got even worse. And so what leads to the impeachment of Johnson is actually the move of Johnson to try to have Stanton removed from his post. Both men kept going back and forth, and Johnson actually removed Stanton not once, not twice, but 3 times. And it was like literally a ping pong. They were like going back and forth. So Johnson had Stanton removed once, and the Congress comes together and was like, nah, we're not letting that happen. They override it. He ends up appointing Ulysses Grant, actually, to take his place. And then Grant was like, oh, snaps. The Congress is voting to put him back in, so let me resign my post and mind my business. So then Johnson is like all pissed off again. So he kicks him out again, removes him again as Secretary of War, and then he puts someone else in his place. And eventually the back and forth is going to lead to Congress basically saying that you're overstepping your boundaries, and now we are going to impeach him. So February 24th, 1868, Johnson goes down in history as literally the first president to be impeached by the House. And this happened in 1868. He then is going to go on trial. And remember, as James said, he was absolutely right. Once the House impeaches you, it has to go to the Senate. And you just need a simple majority. But and they actually had those numbers. But the reason why the impeachment did not go through is because the senators were afraid that they would set a precedent, that you can remove the president over like something really small and really minor. And they didn't want to set that precedent because he was the first one to be impeached. So after months of a trial, after the back and forth, by one vote, he is acquitted. And he gets to remain president of the United States. Anybody want to comment on how things might have been different if they have voted the opposite way? Tiffany said a huge cat fight between men. Yes, Tenure of Office Act. Yes. Okay, looking in the comments, like Uno reverse for between. That's funny. A Bill Clinton type would have been kicked out. James, you want to expand on that? Want to unmute yourself and expand on that?
Okay, so obviously stuff would be so different that Bill Clinton wouldn't even be born, much less be president. But if you had someone who did the same stuff that he did, like he did with Monica Lewinsky, some people argued like that's a personal thing. That's not something you can kick someone out for. But
Right.
if you already had this precedent, then it's a lot easier to argue that this is within the grounds of convicting him or whoever was like him. So that would probably happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a pretty good assessment. If they actually impeached him, maybe there would have been more consequences for Trump. Oh my God, Rose was saying the same. Look at that. Trump wouldn't have been born. Butterfly effect. You guys are so funny. All right. So, and then after his presidency, after Johnson leaves office, he's followed by Ulysses S. Grant, and that's the same Grant that he actually tried to put into the position of Secretary of War. And just a little bit about Grant, obviously his fight, and we're going to talk about the KKK momentarily, but Grant's fight is going to be the KKK, but also at the same time, there's a huge massacre that happens of Plains Indians, which he kind of helps facilitate. So at the same time, when I was teaching this last year to my students, and I was telling them about the KKK and how Grant fought and tried to, eradicate it, everyone was like, woo! And then I was like, and at the same time, he is responsible for spearheading a situation that ends up in the massacre of Plains Indians. And then they were like, Oh. So it's really important when we're talking about history that we're trying to bring in as many different perspectives as possible, because what you'll find is that these historical figures are very complicated figures. Yikes. I know, right? All right, so we talked a little bit about Jim Crow Black Codes laws yesterday, and I wanted to bring some primary sources to you guys that highlights these Black codes. So I will read section 1, and then I will ask for someone to read section 2. But Rukai has a hand. Rukai, are you offering to read section 2? Okay, awesome. All right, so I'm going to do section 1. That all rogues and vagabonds, idle and dissipated persons, beggars, jugglers, or persons practicing unlawful games or plays, runaways, common drunkards, common night walkers, pilferers, lewd, wanton, or lascivious persons in speech or behavior, common railers and brawlers, persons who neglect their calling or employment, misspend what they earn, or do not provide for the support of themselves or their families or dependents, and all other idle and disorderly persons, including all who neglect all lawful business, habitually misspend their time by frequenting houses of ill fame. I think you guys can all guess what that is. Gaming houses or tippling shops shall be deemed and considered vagrants under the provisions of this act, and upon conviction thereof shall be fined not exceeding $100 with all accruing costs, and be imprisoned at the discretion of the court not exceeding 10 days. All righty.
Jail for juggling. I'm going to go to jail for misspending what I earned.
Right. Like at this point, you're just throwing people in jail for no good reason. And yeah, like you're locking people up. So let's unpack that a little bit, right? What can you go to jail for here? Okay, finger point. Irma said, I'm going to jail for showing my ankles. Imagine going to jail for buying Oreos. Oh, yeah.
Misspending.
Because going to jail because of not social distancing. Yeah. All right. So what are so let's unpack this for a little bit. Let's talk about these things. So you can literally go to jail for what? Pretty much not working. Yeah, especially if it's a bad April Fool's joke, right? If it's considered lewd. So foul language can get you locked
sitting
up.
around all day.
Yeah. So this makes it super easy if there are a group of Black men standing outside having a conversation, that becomes criminalized. If you are using foul language in like a bar, that becomes criminalized. If you decide not to go to work, and literally, and this is important, right? So if you don't go to work for whatever reason, you can get put in jail. But who are the people that are in charge of these jobs? Yes, a lot of words do have leeway to interpretation, so it makes it super easy to lock people up. Yes, exactly. So white men are the ones that are in position of owning and managing these jobs. So if you don't go to work, you essentially get locked up. And you could come in and say, hey, my mom was sick or whatever the case may be, and that won't make a difference, right? So this becomes extremely problematic. And the Black codes are essentially allowing Black people to be locked up in large numbers for the most minute of things. And this is able to keep them in some way in bondage. Many of them are either sold out, like if you're in jail, a lot of times you can be sold or rented, I should say, to someone else to work on their farm while you're in jail. So it's really just a way to continue slavery. And that documentary, thank you, Ms. Williams, the other one I was talking about is called Slavery by Another Name. And that's a really good, it's a really good documentary that really goes into depth and highlights how the 13th Amendment and all the things that come after leads to this history that we now have with mass incarceration, and in particular, locking up people of color. Why can't? All right. So, Rukaya, you said you would read section 2. You do not have to use an accent. You can unmute yourself and go whenever you're ready.
All freedmen, free Negroes, and mulattoes in the state over the age of 18 found on the second Monday in January 1866 or thereafter with no lawful employment or business, or found unlawfully assembling themselves together either in the day or night time, and all white persons assembled themselves with freedmen, free Negroes, or mulattoes, or usually associating with freemen, free Negroes, or mulattoes on terms of equality, or living in adultery or fornication with a freed woman, freed Negro, or freed mulatto shall be shall be deemed vagrant. Vagrant, and on conviction therefore shall be fined in a sum not exceeding, in the case of a freedman, free Negro, or mulatto, $50, and a white man $200, and imprisonment at the discretion of the court, the free Negro not exceeding 10 days, and the white man not exceeding 6 months.
Good. Rukaya. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So the way you say that is mulatto.
Mulatto.
There you
mulatto?
go.
Okay.
Yes, mulatto. Yeah, that I know. When I first saw that word, I was like, they just come up with anything. That basically, a mulatto is somebody who's a mixed race person. Typically mixed race, black and white. So
okay.
But that also, the word means different things depending on different societies too. So that's an FYI. So what else can you go to jail for? This is saying
Not
you can hanging out, not just anyone though. If you're a white man, you can go to jail for what? Hanging out with a black woman. Yeah, and vice versa, right? And then notice too, you can be fined. So $50 if you are black, and $200 if you're white. And these things also, these black codes, you find very similar codes enacted in South Africa as well. If anyone has ever read Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, he actually talks about this. And if you compare the primary source document here and the primary source document that he includes in his book, Born a Crime, they're so similar. So this is something that kind of, wherever there is colonization, laws like this are implemented. They do not want intermixing between black and white people. They want to keep them separate. And I'm sure we can all figure out why there is such a focus on keeping black people and white people separate. Oh, that's okay, Colin. Oh, you're right. Yes, it's such a good book. I really love that book. And Trevor is an amazing writer because he's able to capture his voice so well within his writing. Okay, so here's another one. Can I get a volunteer? What's the book? Born a Crime.
James?
Section 1. That no freedman, free Negro, or mulatto not in the military service of the United States government and not licensed so to do by the Board of Police of his or her county shall keep or carry firearms of any kind or any ammunition, dirk, or bowie knife, and on conviction thereof in the county court shall be punished by a fine.
So what is this basically saying, you guys? Oh, Colin has his hand up. Yes, Colin, you can unmute yourself.
It's basically saying Black people aren't allowed to have any sort of weapons.
And what does that violate?
What is that? What?
What does that violate?
The Second Amendment? No. The First Amendment.
That's free speech.
The Second Amendment. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You got it.
No, you're right. That's why I was like this. Oh, maybe you can't see me because I'm just looking at my screen. So I'm not sure if you can see me.
Yeah, on the smaller screen.
Okay. So yes, good job. So it's so crazy because a lot of these laws were literally unconstitutional, but they were allowed to do it anyway. And some of these things they tried to keep off the books. So it's not exactly the law, but it's definitely the law in the South. And here is a picture that highlights some Black men who violated some of the Black codes. And again, these men could be hired out to someone else while they're in prison and forced to work on their plantation, and it's all for free. So Black people were never meant to own guns, and they were really scared that if they did own guns, that it would end up, they would basically be able to defend themselves. So that's really where that comes in. So if they don't have guns, if somebody is coming to your home to burn your home, to burn crosses, to attack your family, it's really hard for you to defend yourself. So these laws really they want to make it hard for Black people to be able to survive and be able to defend themselves. And this is an example of a prison. This prison is called Parchman Prison. It's in Mississippi. And so a lot of the reasons why people begin to, a lot of the reasons why they begin to arrest these young Black men and put them in jail is to be able to make up for the fact that a lot of the states that left the Union are now bankrupt. So they need a way to make money. Many of the Black men who were locked up were innocent. A lot of the charges and the claims were fabricated or embellished to make it seem like they had a bigger role in it than they did. And again, they began to lease these prisoners to whoever needed them and force them to work for free. And this is the link that takes you to that PBS article. Liz, can you remind me to share this with you?
Yeah.
Because I keep forgetting to do that.
The one you text me?
Huh?
The one that you text to me?
No, this one right here. I keep forgetting to share this.
Oh, the one we're watching, the slideshow?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes,
please do. All right. Okay.
You're right.
You can just share it with me.
Huh? All right. So now listen, it wasn't just the South. All right. So we Americans, we Northerners, we Yankees, as they like to call us, we have a very short memory when it comes to a lot of these things. So we like to paint ourselves as the good guys. We like to pretend that all of the racial violence that happens post-Civil War is only in the South. But that is just simply not the case. Okay, so before I go to the next screen, how many of you have heard of Octavius Catto? And you guys can put yes, no, or what you know in the chat box. Yes, there are a lot of modern prisons that share the name with old plantations. Nope. Nope. Dang. Come on, let's get some more. Yes, no. Cameron said he's packing up. You better not. Don't you do it. Don't you do it. Octopus what? Octavius Catto. The Philly history. Oh, Tiffany got it. What's the question? How many of you know who Octavius Catto is? So people are just putting yes, no. Y'all better stop with these backpacks now. The only clock I recognize is the clock in my head. I've heard the name. Fighting for the right to vote, yes. Nadia says yes. Mrs. 8 p.m. And we go until 12 midnight. Ari says yes. Cool. Okay. It's all right. I'll serve you guys lunch. Eat lunch. All right. So. Oh, all right. Okay. So now they're okay with it. Okay. We get like 5 minutes left to do so. I'm down going to. Cam is funny. All right. So most of you have not heard of him, but he is a very essential figure here in Philadelphia. He was actually born in North Carolina. He was either North or South Carolina on February 22nd, 1839. Both of his parents was free. His father, William Kettle, was actually formerly enslaved, and he was able to earn his freedom. He became a minister. And when he became a minister, he, preached. He was also very active in terms of abolitionism. And he eventually moves his family to Maryland because he actually had plans to move to Africa, and Sam would know what I'm about to say. Liberia. What do you guys know about Liberia? Liberia. Skipping English class. Yes, James, go ahead. You can unmute yourself.
So after the Civil War, even among progressives types, there was still this sort of idea that Black people and white people could not get along together. So there's this idea among progressives like, well, what if we set some land aside and then Black Americans can go back to Africa and civilize it? So that's what they did. They bought a small amount of land on the coast, and they actually had a lot of people who moved there. But surprise, surprise, the natives weren't happy with it, and the fact that the elites were Black did not make it magically better.
Yeah. Okay. So, and Lincoln was actually one of those people. So Africa was like a second choice. Lincoln actually, and men like Lincoln were actually at first advocating for Blacks to move to a Caribbean country. And then they eventually settled on Liberia. Now, though a lot of Black people did move to Liberia, a lot of Black people refused because, one, we're talking about slavery. 1619 is when the first Black person was brought to an English colony, right? But Black people have been brought to the Americas since the 1500s. So for a lot of Black people, they're like, okay, I acknowledge that I am of African descent, but I know nothing about the language, nothing about the culture, and I helped build this country. Why should I have to leave? Why? So a lot of Black people actually were against moving, and they refused to do so. And again, you're absolutely right. When Black Americans came to Liberia, they brought that colonist mindset that kind of had been embedded in them from living here in the U.S., and it didn't end well. It ended up with a lot of conflict between the indigenous Liberian Africans and the Black people who moved there from the Americas. And so that's important to note. So they were actually going to move there, but an issue of arrest, a warrant for arrest was issued to Catto for a letter that he had wrote that had been discovered. And so he actually fled with his family to Philadelphia, which works out for us because Catto, his son, Octavius, Catto's son, Octavius, ended up being like almost like a genius. He was very intelligent. Ended up attending ICY, which you guys now know as Cheney University. But at the time, it was Philadelphia's only Black high school, and he was a rock star. He graduated at the top of his class and actually went on to continue to teach at that school. And some of the subjects that he taught was Greek, mathematics, Latin, and he also taught English. But he wasn't done. When the Civil War broke out, he encouraged Black people to join the Civil War. Then he established a free military school, and then he wasn't done. Then he joined the Pennsylvania National Guard, and he helped to support Black troops at Camp William Penn, which if you guys get a chance, you should visit all the war sites here in Philadelphia and in the surrounding areas like Fort Washington, Gettysburg. They're really a wealth of information, whether it's the American Revolution or the Civil War. So that's something that you guys can do when outside opens back up again. But he was eventually elevated to major and inspector of the 5th Brigade. He was very well respected. And what happens is this was about a year after Blacks earned the right to, not earn, but are given the right to vote. And now it's being put to the test in this municipal election. And there is a riot, a huge riot that breaks out down on South Street. If you're anybody from South Philly, there's a huge riot that breaks out in South Street and Lombard and South actually. And Catto ends up being murdered, and he's murdered by a Democratic Party boss. Actually, not the boss, but a Democratic Party Kelly, who was like really entrenched in the Democratic Party there. And this violence was actually kind of pushed by the Democratic Party boss known as William McMullen, who was an Irish bigwig in the city during this time period. And there's a lot more that could go with this. People shooting. Let me look at the chats. Wasn't Catto Malcolm's ex? Slowly walking to the door. Oh my God, I'm trying to find like the serious moments. I remember now. Oh, the Centennial. Okay, so we'll talk about. Okay.
Olivia wanted to know if Catto inspired Malcolm X. I hadn't heard anything about that.
I hadn't heard anything about that either, but I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. And I'll look into that. I don't like to say no, that's not the case, or yes, that's the case, because
I don't know.
If we don't know, we don't know, you know. So that's one thing about Miss Williams. We're not going to know everything, right?
Nope.
So I will get back to you guys on that one. I like your accent. Where you from? Wait, what?
No, so they're chatting on the side. Some of these.
I know. I can't find like all the serious stuff. All right.
Tiffany said many people came for his funeral.
Yes, many people came for his funeral, and now he has a statue down at City Hall. So if you guys ever get a chance to go, you should. If you're ever down there, you should definitely check it out. And there's like a little video that goes along with this, but I don't think we have time because now we're like already past. But this is his tombstone, and it just talks about who Catto was as a person. And I'll read it for you guys. It says, Octavius Catto was a prominent scholar and dominant leader in the civil rights movement of the mid-1800s who led efforts to register thousands of African Americans to vote. He worked tirelessly in the face of violence and open hostility towards Black participation in the political process. Catto was a member of numerous civic, literary, patriotic, and political groups, including the Franklin Institute and the Union League Association. He was the headmaster at the Institute for Colored Youth, later named Cheney University. He served in the Pennsylvania National Guard as a major in the Union Army during the Civil War. He was assassinated on Election Day, October 10, 1871, in front of a polling place on the 700 block of South Street in South Philadelphia. So,
where is this tombstone?
I don't know where he's buried. I should figure that out.
I can look it up. I was just wondering if it was in Philly.
I know. I would be curious to know that too. F to play respects, and now I'm putting F. I love these kids. They're hilarious. Yeah, thousands of people came for his funeral, and they came from all over, from so many states. He was very well respected, very, very well liked, very well known, and a constant and tireless advocate for Black civil rights. And so I would not be surprised if he was inspired by Malcolm X. A lot of his tactics, in terms of like just not taking no for an answer, speaking truth to power, and doing what needed to be done, characterized who he was as a person.
He was only 32.
Yep, he was 32 years old. Funny how Philly have a statue for. Yeah, when was it built? Like 2017, 2018?
Yeah, around then.
Why did it take that long, right? It's crazy. And there's so many other statues we can have too. Like I went to Chicago over the summer and they have a Great Migration statue, which is absolutely beautiful. And we should have that here because Philly was a huge destination for people who came up during the Great Migration. My grandmother, I'm actually on my mother's side, I'm third generation Great Migration, and on my dad's side, I am actually second generation Great Migration. So
we should have that. We should have the Underground Railroad monuments.
Yes, we should. Philly has such a huge history in terms of like civil rights and abolitionism. And a lot of people don't know about it. The fact that so many of you didn't know who Catto was is a travesty, but now you know.
All right, did you share this with me?
No, I'm about to do so right now. This is the statue. I just want to show you guys.
Outside of City Hall.
Yep.
So have you seen it before, guys?
So have any of you seen this statue? Yep. Oh yeah, I've seen it. Yes. No. Lean. Yes. Lean, Game, Strong. Michael Jackson don't have nothing on him. I think so. Not to my memory. No. All right. So if you guys are down in City Hall now, it's your duty to check out the statue for Octavius Kettle.
It's facing south.
Yes. And it's that what used to be over there? The not Barnes and Noble. It used to be a really big record store. It's over on that side.
Sam Ash.
What is it?
Sam Ash.
The record store?
I think so.
I can't remember what it was called. I know I used to go in there all the time. I actually saw Questlove in there one day.
Oh, I know Questlove in a record store in downtown too on Market Street.
Yes. All right, so we're gonna call it a day. We're gonna call it a day for today. We will pick up here tomorrow with Octavius Catto and go into a little bit more of reconstruction and some of the terror that comes, that is born out of this process. And well, no, we won't. We will continue on with this on Monday. Tomorrow, we're going to do a Kahoot about some of the things that we've learned. And I look forward to it. Thank you guys so much for coming, for rocking with us. You guys are the best. Tell a friend, you guys. Share the fun. Hoard all this fun for yourself. Text them. Tell them come hang out for African American history class. Tell them it's litty. We have some singing. Ms. Williams is singing tomorrow.
Uh-oh. That was the April Fools.
April Fools. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful day. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye.
Daisy.
Thanks, guys. You too, Liv.
So sweet. Adios. Gotta love these kids. All right, Miss Williams, I'll see you tomorrow.
All right, see you tomorrow. Bye.
Bye. How do I stop this? Here we go.